Hi, so thank you. This is sort of very deja vu for me. If many of you don't know, my previous position was a director of technology at a school prior to coming to McLean. My background is in instructional technology, and I have given many workshops on blended flip learning before coming to McLean, working with specifically Brent Heinrichs, who was actually the first administrator in the country to work with Apple for a one-to-one iPad program. So I got to work with him, which was a great opportunity to understand flipped and blended learning, as well as Scott Lieberman, who used to be the Assistant Director of Technology at Flint Hill School. He's currently the Director of Technology at Alexandria Country Day School. And he gave me a lot of insight, as well as working with a private consulting group with a gentleman named Carl Hutzler, who does consulting for independent schools within the DC, Maryland area, as well in Pennsylvania, New York, all the way up to Maine, looking at how schools can strategize and best utilize technology. So one of the things that I was very fortunate with is being able to learn and gather information about blended and flipped classroom and apply it to my own classroom. So this is usually a 4 to 5 hour workshop that I've compressed into 4 hours with a lot of information. Everything that I'm presenting here and any resources is on the website that I've sent to you. I'm going to continue adding stuff today after I go through everything. A lot of what I'm sharing, I've also attached links to the resources as well as the articles that are based off of research that cognitive psychologists, education technologists, and instructional technologists are doing in their field. So a lot of this is based off of data that is being used in school districts, specific schools, as well as individual teachers in their classrooms. So if you want to talk more about this, I'm very passionate about it. And one of the things that drew me to McLean is the ability to do and incorporate this into my classroom. So a couple of things for the schedule-wise. There's 4 things that I wanted to get to. The first thing is just an introduction to what blended learning and the flipped classroom. I'll be using those terms interchangeably today. Those are often confused, what those terms are. The second is I'm going to just show a quick overview of a Tran formative lesson is and what my kids see on a daily basis. Thirdly, I'm going to show some tools. I'm not going to go in depth with the tools. I'm going to introduce them and talk about what tools I use, because I use a lot of different ways I flip the classroom. So I don't just limit myself to one specific technique. I actually like to mix it up, and the kids appreciate that as well. It's actually easier to flip your lesson now than ever. With recent updates to the Mac OS, as well as other tools in your iPad, through YouTube, through video, and whatnot. And then secondly, we're going to actually do an activity that is called redefinition. So when you flip your lesson, the idea is you're redefining the objectives and standards and how you're going to get to them. You're redefining that pathway. And so we're going to look at creating that blended lesson at the very end. You should have all the slides here if you want to follow along or write notes. I also included the redefinition video lesson sample, as well as a planning sheet that is also on the website if you ever need to remake that for your own use. Okay. And then I'm going to share what I learned, because there's a lot of things that I've learned inside my own classroom, as well as experiences from other teachers. I was actually about 3 weeks ago going to a yearly workshop at Poland Arms talking about blended learning and the idea of a flipped classroom, and was able to collaborate with a lot of teachers that are part of AIMS, where they are utilizing a flipped and blended classroom. So just a couple of things that I've learned. The first thing is to define out the benefits of technology in education. There's greater collaboration. There's more project-based creations. The quality of work is definitely increased with typing rather than writing on the posters and detailed research. The plethora of information that is readily accessed for students are all what I call the main points of using technology in education. Secondly, sorry if I'm going through this fast, so this is more introduction. So a couple examples of technology in education is leveraging digital curriculum, such as textbooks and simulation. Google Classroom, as cited by Leary and his associates this past year, has increased the effectiveness of workflows for students, as well as video instruction, where using YouTube, using different screencasting apps. Secondly, what blended learning looks like is this idea of a flipped classroom, where a lot of instruction is done at home by the students. It's student-centered. It's direct instruction either through video, an electronic module or interactive content, individual means, and class hours is used for hands-on learning. And this is a very representative diagram, and it's used a lot when you go to workshops and stuff. So I've seen that quite a bit. Why did I choose to flip my classroom? One, sorry, I have some of these timed and not timed. So I needed extra time for labs and activities. As you know, teaching a science class requires lab work. A lot of this lab work takes a whole period. So if I were to lecture in class or give content to my students, I did not have enough time, and my students did not have enough time to really engage in that higher level activity with labs. Secondly, lecturing and note-taking were dead time for my students. It's really hard to get them engaged, especially when their minds and their heads are thinking about the next YouTube video that's going to be auto-playing next when they get their phones at the end of the day. So I wanted to leverage that part of their brain in order to engage them. Second, I wanted higher engagement for my students. I wanted more time for them to collaborate. I wanted more time for them to discuss. And just teaching content like terms and definitions in class in a traditional way was not really cutting it out with the limited amount of time that I had in class. And I also wanted students to practice active listening when I teach in class. So when I do stand in front of a class to review or teach beyond what they've previewed, I wanted them to really actively listen so that they know that when I do teach in class, it's not just the basic level of understanding, it is the next level. And lastly, I wanted to teach higher order thinking in class and basic concepts. So that's everything that were my goals. There are 4 pillars. Flexibility of time and space. Students need to be able to access that information flexibly and at any time at their fingertips. It should be student-centered. It should focus just on content. So we're talking about knowledge, and today we'll talk about when you guys do your activity on Bloom's taxonomy. And then providing continuous feedback. My kids get continuous feedback in the process, and that starts at the beginning of the class. Some benefits. It's a defined learning pace. It means that students can define how fast they want to gather content. Class efficiency, using class time to really reinforce and review. Giving immediate feedback. I know my kids in the first 10 to 15 minutes whether they understood what I've given them at the beginning of class. And again, that goes with diagnosed issues as well. So they know what they need to know, and I know what I need to do to alter my lesson plans. And then it's based on pedagogical standards that any intro to education class teaches. So this is the anatomy of a lesson, looking at what typical flipped class looks like for my students. So one of the things is I'm on your Google site. I actually have the sort of links to all the resources as well as things that my students do. So One of the things is they watch videos that I make, and one sort of disclaimer is that this is not like production quality videos, but they're videos that are very genuine in a way that there's imperfections, so that my students know that I made them and that it's directed towards them rather than taking videos that someone else has made. And I think that's the takeaway that I'll talk later on about, is having to make your own content. Doing something like this with full-blown like video production equipment like I have here and editing and whatnot takes a lot of time and effort, but there's also different levels of how you want to flip your classroom. So this is sort of like that top level. Not very good, I'm still working at it, but I hope you guys enjoy. Watch like a quick minute of it, because I don't like to hear myself talk in the video. But wait, my friend Mike. Sorry?
Kepler Center?
Yeah.
I don't want to see it. Live,
Alright, we'll get back to the ice rink in a second. Today we're going to talk about Newton's second law of motion. Newton's second law of motion describes the idea that force, mass, and acceleration are all directly related to each other. Now, the three variables, force, is either the applied force or the force of an object exerts on another object as a push or a pull. Mass is the amount of matter an object possesses. And acceleration is actually the description of how fast an object speeds up or slows down or changes direction. Typically, Newton's second law is described with this equation: F equals m times a. Force is equal to mass times acceleration. If we are given an object's mass and an object's acceleration, we can actually find an object's force. So I'm going to skip a little bit ahead, I talk about this for about 2 minutes, talk about the equation, and then I jump into using an example with the students in the last part, if the internet. So I actually get free ice time as a coach at Kepler, so my friend was helping me out with this.
Not just when we're speeding up. So as you can see here, in the game of hockey, you have to use your force to propel your mass, which is your body, to speed up and slow down.
This is, again, an example calculation. So this is about, I think for work for me, about 4 to 5 hours to get a 5 to 6 minute video up. However, on a daily basis, that's not really practical. So I really only do that when it's special. However, I do use an app quite a bit called Explain Everything, which many of you have already used. And I'll talk more about the apps and sort of tools that I use later on. But this is just a basic screencasting of just basic lecture notes that you would do in class, introducing the content. And if you notice, a lot of the videos are no longer than like 7 minutes that I do with the kids. And the key is time. And what I found is that when you give students about 6 to 7 minutes of content, they're able to rewatch it if they're confused for a part. They're able to pause. The nice thing is with YouTube, you can actually add captions as I'm talking, so the kids who need that type of visual cueing can follow along as well. So it's actually really useful. Yes, question?
Do you also give them this worksheet for them to fill out?
I do. So one of the things is I really still want them to be able to take notes and be accountable. And so they do take notes from here. On these sheets, they also have to do their own work as well. So they can't just like pause and copy. They actually have certain markers. I'll add in like a joke of the day that they need to listen out for, or a pun of the day in the middle of the video. So they don't know when that happens, and so that's what I quiz them when they come to class to see if they know or they've actually watched the video. So it's trying to get creative for that piece of I forgot the word, but accountability for the students. So a little bit of that. So going back to the tools for flipping, there's many ways to flip a classroom. One of the most basic ways is using Google Slides and PowerPoint and QuickTime Capture. I was able to make the 3-minute video that you guys would be watching today before you engage in the activity in about 5 minutes time. Basically using two tools, PowerPoint and QuickTime Capture, which is already on your computer. Explain Everything is another one that I use, which is the one where I was able to write, and many students have used it. I wish Tran was here because she started using that in her classroom a lot, where you upload a PDF document and you're able to write in it. You can add pictures, you can embed YouTube videos in there, any animations. It's a really full function app that really checks, in my mind, 99% of what teachers use in a flipped classroom. This is probably the most popular tool in use for flipping your classroom. Yes?
Do the kids interact on Explain Everything, or it's just a visual?
It's just a visual, but we'll talk about the interaction part that you can add in. Yes?
So if we were to switch to Chromebooks next year, does that have Explain Everything?
Yes, it does have Explain Everything as an app. And the nice thing is, I'll talk about sort of the student interaction part, because part of flipping your classroom is that accountability part of the students. And so those are a separate set of tools that probably aren't that different than what you are already using in your classroom. Really the only thing that's changed when you're flipping or blending your classroom is the way you deliver content at home and the way that homework looks like. But everything that you do in class, either you should augment, meaning expand out those activities because you have that little bit of extra time, or changing the way that you do certain assessments. And then last but not least, like I said, full-blown video production. That's something that I'm really passionate about to get to. So I do about maybe 10 of those full-blown production videos for the kids each year, and they really, really enjoy it. Accountability. So this is where we talk about the assessment part for students. So things like Google Slides, and I'll show examples of all this. So we have Google Slides, your normal handouts and worksheets. A lot of times when I'm working with teachers in the redefinition activity, essentially you're changing where you use handouts and worksheets, but you're not really reinventing the wheel. So your lesson shouldn't change, or the core of your objective shouldn't change. It's the delivery that is different. Either do a portal quiz or discussion questions. I do a lot of discussion questions. I have a must ask you a question board area on my board, and so the discussion question the kids have each day that when they come in will be posted here, and it's higher level thinking. It's based off what they did the night before, and we'll see that in a second when you guys engage in a flipped lesson. And I don't know why this one. There's one more. Yeah, Ed Puzzle. So as the students watch the video, there's an opportunity for you to add questions, add discussion questions, and I'll show you Ed Puzzle in a little bit.
Is that an app?
It's actually a website, so as long as you have internet access, the kids can interact with it. This is a great tool. I chose not to use it this year, purely because I switched a couple things in the way that I structure my classroom, but this is a great tool if you would like to use it, and I've used it in the past and it's awesome. It gives real-time feedback, and the kids have to watch the whole video without skipping. And I'll talk more about that in a second. And it's very easy to sign up, especially for us McLean, because we all drink what I call, quote-unquote, the Google Kool-Aid. So the key thing to remember is it's not one size fits all. It really is really tailoring it to your class. I see a lot of times when I go to ISTE workshops or ISTE conferences where a lot of companies who design these apps and design these curriculums for the flipped classroom try to fit and push in a teacher into this preconceived mold. And I don't really believe in that, and a lot of people who do blending and flipping do not believe in that. Every class is different. The way you teach is different, so the way the content delivery is going to be different. And so that's something that is definitely something that I always try to remind myself is, what I do changes from year to year because I get a different group of students. And so it's something that I'm very passionate about. Yes?
So speaking of that, can we go back to the videos? So how are you creating these videos every year, or do you have canned videos? Because there's certain things like Newton's second law that's not changing, so you could theoretically create that video and keep that as like a stock video.
Yeah, so a lot of some of the videos I do use as stock, so from year to year. So once you create them and I'm happy with them to the point where I don't foresee any edits to them, then I do keep them. What I do is keep a template, and a lot of times if I'm happy with it, I'll just send it out. So the YouTube channel, the kids subscribe to. So a lot of times, if it's a video that they need to watch the night or the night for homework, I'll push it up as sort of the new video, even though I've made it last year. So, for example, I'm giving about 50% new content each year, and a lot of things I'm just like editing. Yes?
Is this available to everybody to see? Does this go on?
No. So this is, all the videos are unlisted. So a couple videos I do.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's unlisted, so that means that only the kids, if they have a link, are able to view it.
Okay.
And then some teachers choose to take the videos down right after they're done. Some videos I have made public just because I needed to for graduate school classes and whatnot, but for the most part they're unlisted. I do take some videos down that I don't really particularly like, just so that I have a running record of what I do like and what I don't like. And we'll get an opportunity to sort of play around with some tools before the end of the hour, just to practice as we're doing blending and flipping. Yes?
So, if someone has a link to your videos,
Mhm.
do they have access to all of your videos?
No, just that video.
Just the ones you give them, okay.
Yeah, so I post a link to the portal, and that's how the kids access it.
Okay.
Yep, good questions. Did I answer your question? Okay. So I think we are going to try flipped activity now. So the first thing is, you're gonna watch a 3-minute video. It actually happens to be 3:36. I know the kids, I'll be like, oh yeah, it's a 5-minute video tonight, but they're like, Mr. Tran, it's really 5 minutes and 36 seconds. So it's actually 3 minutes, 36 seconds. Actually, the most basic video capture was just a screenshot of what I did on my computer. I did it this morning. I told myself whenever I do this that I want to do the morning up, just because I want to be in the mindset of what other teachers would be doing, is recording in the morning or recording in the afternoon. And I have a handout, so as you guys are going to watch this video, there's a handout talking about Bloom's taxonomy. I'm sure you guys have seen this many times as teachers, but I really use that as a guide. And I know at the beginning of the year during professional development, Susan and I think David talked a lot about it. But this is just a reminder and how Bloom's taxonomy fits in with the flipped classroom. And so I'm going to run through exactly how I do a flipped classroom as well as the activity. So you're going to watch the video. We have a discussion question afterwards. And then we're going to work on the redefinition activity. And then the rest of the time is, so the redefinition activity will take you about 10 to 15, maybe 20 minutes. And then let's start at the end of that time breaking down some tools. And since we have a very small group, I think there's a lot that we can discuss about how to change. And I asked you to bring a lesson that you wanted to flip today. And that's something that the redefinition activity is going to help us do. So that's it. We're going to go ahead. If you can access the video, what I want you to do is either watch it with a partner or watch it with yourself. So you can either go to the hallway or not.
Where
I'll
do
give
we
you
get it?
about.
It's
I
on
want it
the
to be
page.
personal.
Is it on the link that you sent us?
Yes, it's on the. If you go to the link,
Email, he sent us something.
if you go to the link, and you go to Flip Classroom Workshop. So there's a link to a video lesson, and I call it Flipped Redefinition. And if you can't see it, this is the link. So you can go ahead and type that into your address bar. And I want you guys to watch it individually. So if you guys want to go to your
What's the
classroom,
example multimedia content?
it's in the workshop one.
One
Yeah.
example.
So we can reconvene here and maybe 9:16
Okay.
should be enough time.
Okay.
Where am I looking?
Where did you go?
The left-hand side.
It wasn't boring to have to do some self-deprecating. It was really straightforward. It was a
I was
really
like-
good, it was a very good refresher.
I
of
really
Bloom's
enjoyed
taxonomy.
actually filling this out too.
Yeah.
So I don't,
So don't be so confident. No, it was good.
So as you guys are finished watching
Just
it,
lost a friend.
one of the things is what I do is that discussion question. This is really where I use as a jumping off point for the students. So I really love this. My kids don't like it for the first month, but they start enjoying it because some of these questions get really outside the box. But for today, this one's a more straightforward one. The question is, would flipping your classroom change your role in the classroom? So when I mean your role, means a teacher. Why or why not? Because there's two sides to this, and I look at it from both sides. So I don't have a side that I take, but think about that for a second, then we can share and discuss. So that's usually a mustache question, by the way.
Are they usually things that won't have a
No answer.
definitive answer? So it's really an open debate.
Exactly.
Do you have a time limit? Because since there is no,
Yep, I give 5 minutes. So
Okay.
when the kids walk in, they have an agenda, and they have a warm-up. They have 5 minutes or whatever time. I put a timer on my iPad, and it beeps. And so that gives, and then we start class. So
so the discussion ends when the timer goes off.
I know the discussion starts because I have to check homework. They usually have a quick warm-up ticket to complete, and then they also ponder that. So it's
So
a
they have
step.
5 minutes to do a warm-up and the discussion question.
Yep.
And then, and you take attendance, and then after that, and how long do you give to then like sharing whatever?
About
they-
5 minutes.
5 minutes,
Yep.
okay.
So that's after the first.
That's after the
minutes.
first 5 minutes, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, anybody want to take let's open this up. Elise and then Taryn.
I would say yes, because instead of the provider of information during the class time, you're more of a facilitator of discussion or activity.
I was gonna say, it kind of made the same thing, that you become more of a facilitator, but that idea too, that it takes it from a teacher-centered to a more student-centered approach.
Anybody else? Because I'll take the opposite.
Well, you can still be, you are the authority in the room. You're the person who's the guide, if not the leader. Well, the pusher, the guide, whatever. I don't mean pusher as far as, you know, from behind, pushing the kids from behind.
Right. Anything else?
What do you say?
So what I think, and this is what I actually finished my one of a big paper I wrote 2 years ago, was that the teacher's role has not changed. And the fact that you're just flipping your classroom, it just means that, you know, what you would do in class is just done at home, and what you do usually at home, doing like homework or like writing a paper and all that's done in class. So your role hasn't really changed to plan all of that. It's still very much the same type of education construct that we operate on. The only thing that I feel in my classroom that's changed is the kids don't feel rushed. They feel a lot more time, and I think that's going to be a theme moving onward.
Huh.
So, would flipping your classroom change your students' role in the classroom? Why or why not? So, this is the second discussion question. Usually I'll hit one, but two. I saw Heavenly's hand and then Barbara.
I mean, of course, yes. I mean, one, they have to be accountable, and it's forcing them, but not in a negative manner. Like, they have to come with material and preparedness for the classroom. But I also find that they also become like the captains of the ship as well. Like, we move forward because you've done your work, and so we can have a robust discussion, we can have a great lab. If you didn't, then you're holding us up, and if no one said it, then you're holding us all behind. So how far we move forward, so it shifts how they look at their accountability.
And I'll talk a little bit about when I go to what my experience is on how those kids that don't come prepared to class and what that looks like, because that's a big one.
Sure.
Yeah, really.
I saw another hand over here, or oh, yeah.
Well, I was thinking it just makes them more active learners. They can come into class and not be sitting there, you know, you're not filling their heads with the information. They're actually doing something with what they know.
I would think it also, you've got a lot of kids when you present new information in the classroom for the first time, it kind of makes them anxious.
Yeah.
And now they're having previewed the information before class, they're a little bit more comfortable.
They're able to explore more. A lot of my kids found something interesting in the videos, and one of the things is they just Google search more about it, and they come to class becoming experts.
Wow. A question about parents.
So yes, that's also my. So
Okay,
go ahead and ask me.
I'll just let
Can
you
you hold?
then.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be great. I do talk a little bit about parents and sort of the accountability. Anything else? Alrighty. So looking on time, we have 60 more minutes. I'm just going to talk through the redefinition activity really quickly. So there's a sheet here, this handout that I use often when I'm sort of in, I wouldn't say a rut necessarily, but a you know, I need a reminder of what sorry, I need to pull up I thought I had it pulled up already, but apparently not. When I need to redefine a lesson that I haven't done before that's flipped. So one of the things is nothing more than just having your objectives and standards, what you want the kids to learn. The second one that I use is which standards can be met online. What kind of things, content-wise, can I do online and what things I can't? And that's really the second idea. Because some things you just have to teach in person. You just can't do it through an electronic content. Or maybe you have to find something else. So that's the second thing. Third, what is best face-to-face? I've done labs before where I've done the pre-lab at home, and that's worked great. And then I've done labs where the kids watch the videos and they're just, you know, lost when it comes to doing the work at school. So it's really thinking and knowing your students. And this is where I go where not one size fits all. From one year to another, these change. One group might be best met online for a certain activity or certain objective, and then one might be best met face-to-face. So this is how I start. And then on the second page is sort of blending. This is where I talk about the connection between what they see offline at home and then what they see in class. Where's the connecting piece? And that's going to be a very important piece. So it could be a discussion question. That's often my connecting piece to what they've seen before. Could be a warm-up activity, and I'll show you some examples. You know, how you blend it. So you can't just flip your classroom, just, you know, flipping on side. You need a connector, or else it's going to be very disjointed. So this is where the blending the classroom idea comes from. Is that how do you get those two areas to merge? And also, how will your classroom be transformed? I don't flip a lesson unless I have a sort of ulterior motive, and it's beneficial for me and beneficial for my students. In a way, I'm a little selfish. I won't take the time to flip the lesson unless I'm gonna actually get something that is really transformed or positive out of it. Yes.
So you don't flip all your lessons?
I flipped 75% of my lessons.
So what do you mean by get something positive? How do you gauge what?
So that's like through experience. So I will talk a little bit about that because sometimes flipping just doesn't work at all. And that's sort of the reality that a lot of people who talk about flipping in their classroom don't really address is the fact that not all your flip lessons are going to be great. And so it has to be transformed. I'm looking for a way that I get a benefit from flipping my classroom. If I don't, then my normal teaching is probably worth my time and effort and worth the students' time and effort. So that's one key to when I flip a lesson, yes.
Is it ever a valid reason that it's just expedient, I can get them to listen to this for 15 minutes and then I can use my class time for something more hands-on?
Yes.
I mean, just like moving the curriculum along.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And that is
That's a positive outcome.
okay.
Yep. And then sort of along that line is what will blended learning allow you to be able to do? Right? So you mentioned that time.
Right.
It allows me to get that extra 15 minutes. Those extra 15 minutes are very valuable to me, especially when we're doing a lab. And so that's really the really important part. And then assessment accountability. Does that change? A lot of cases, this hasn't really changed. So my class with like quizzes, tests, lab write-ups, and all of that, projects and whatnot. But sometimes it can change, right? Maybe it's instead of doing a quiz that on a particular topic, maybe it's like a practicum. Maybe actually doing the lab, doing answering questions about different steps based on the material, proving something. So that's really the last piece, is that assessment and the accountability piece for the students. And so this is just a framework that I use to go through when I'm planning a lesson that's flipped. It doesn't really look that much different than if you were planning a regular or normal lesson from the ground up. But those questions are more considerations that I take, sort of filling in my students' shoes. What are they going to get? What am I going to get out of it? You know, ultimately we're, as human beings, we're selfish, so we need to get a positive benefit out of something we do. And so this is a way for me to sort of quantify that and think about that. Okay?
Can I ask
Yes.
another question? Are all of your flipped lessons introduced with you on a screen talking to the kids?
Not, for the most part, yes. On occasion, I will use a interactive module or an interactive lab to introduce something at home. The problem with a lot of videos that, well, there's another option, let me say. You can use pre-made videos that other people have made, like Khan Academy, or videos on Edpuzzle, on YouTube, and you know, you can use any of that. But my take is either they're too long, they're not really where the level should be for my students, and it goes back to that not one size fits all.
Right, exactly. Well, I'm thinking of a PowerPoint that I've shown in the past, and I've cherry-picked kind of which slides I want to show my kids, again, depending on who they are. So is that a legitimate thing to like show for a flipped classroom? Like go through the PowerPoint at home and now we'll actually do some of the activities in the classroom?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
There you go.
And a lot of things I forgot to mention at the very beginning is I feel like English teachers, literature teachers have done this, and history teachers too, is the reading of the textbook and then coming to class. You know, the idea of the flipped classroom is not new. But this is more of a 21st century flipped classroom with the integration of the online content and the ability to incorporate multimedia content.
Yeah, can we talk about that? Because I do flip my classroom, but I find that it is not yet where I'd like it to be because I don't have, and then I will do the accountability piece the next day. But I'm finding that I'm losing kids when it comes to understanding what it is that they're reading. Because the downside to history is that I can't always level what it is that we're reading, because I've got so many different reading abilities in the classroom, and I would love to do this more. But then the other component is global events, so I have things that pop up left and right, and so do you have any suggestions? I'm listening and I'm trying to take notes, and I'm thinking about trying to take canned pieces from the textbook that I would otherwise like give them to read, and then turning those into videos. And then that way when like current events come up with articles, then they can have a reading. But would you suggest I also give them like one of those explain everything worksheets to go with it, or is that then giving them too much to do?
So I do a mixture of both. Actually, we do a lot of nonfiction reading in class, and so we do have a textbook. So I do go off some textbook content. It could be some lessons that I would do would be like read the first introduction to the lesson, watch the video, and then the next day I'll have them read an article that's related to that. And so I try to mix it up. I don't find the worksheets too like narrowness for the kids. I think it helps our population sort of follow along and really know what our objectives is and highlighting, and there is a sense of comfort from it. So, but I do add in sort of higher level questions that I don't answer in the video. So not everything that I write in the videos is answered in the sheet. So there are questions that I call do it on your own or on your own, where they actually have to take a chance and do it. So it's not a matter of I'm giving them everything. No, I am only giving them some of it, but they have to also put in sort of their input as well. Yeah.
This is sort of a two-part question, piggybacking on that. One is there a maturity or like an age where this has been shown to be effective, kind of kicking in, and then second. What was second? Is there a breaking in period for students? So they have to kind of learn this process and.
Yeah. So that actually goes to sort of things I've learned. Get student feedback, constant feedback. So the breaking in period. That's where I get a lot of student feedback. Like, what can I do to make your experience better? And typically, it takes my kids about 1 week to really get with the program. And they're, one of the things is this is something that it's possibly new for them, but in a way, it's not. They go home, they watch a lot of YouTube videos, so this is not really any different. And so, but in a way, you're guiding something. And also, the nice thing is, I'll tag my videos with like science and technology or like Newton's laws or something. And it'll actually tag videos when they watch it through YouTube so that it expands out to other channels and they get to share with me videos that they've seen other people do as well. So there's more, that's the social media aspect of it, but beyond that, it takes about a week and a half. Students start buying in when they don't do it pretty quickly. And one of the things that I do is if a student doesn't come to class prepared, that warm-up time, that discussion time, they are in the hallways working on that, so they don't get to participate in that. So they lose sort of that bit, but they don't lose the activity part at the very end. They start sort of missing that out, and right now, I think most of my kids come to class with their work done at this point in the year, where I don't have to do that anymore. But the first month, you do have to sort of be like, you didn't do it, so you have to do it now. Once you're done, you can come back and join us. And I time my videos perfectly between the 5 to 6 minute mark so that I have that 10 minutes for kids who need to catch up. Which feels good in a way that I'm giving an opportunity for kids to do their homework rather than, if they don't do like a worksheet and you're going over in class, they've already lost out or they get sent in the hallway to do that and they're losing that piece. So I'd rather them give up sort of the discussion and warm-up piece for me to get something done so they can engage in the main event. So if that answers your question about accountability, that's how I operate. Each teacher has their own opinions on it, but for me, if they're just out in the hallway working on like a worksheet that they didn't do the night before as the class is going over it, I feel like that is just losing, precious time.
And do you keep a, this would be really cool for like interactive journals too?
Yes.
You could totally, and so do your kids have interactive journals?
Depends on the unit.
Online? Okay.
Yeah, depends on the unit.
Okay.
Make content directed at your students. So I always make my content directed at them because I think you're still a teacher, and going back to the discussion question, the role has not changed. So I really feel that is important. It gets easier. Once you start going, I churn out videos in about 15 minutes in the morning once I have the materials. And again, it's going to that sort of imperfect perfection. They know it's you, they know there's going to be slip-ups. I erase all the time when the video, so it's exactly like you do in class. You're only human, but they really appreciate that. I think, once you get going, it's 10 to 15 minutes to make about a 5-minute video. Getting students bought into the system is only half the battle. So that's one thing that in that week. The other half is the parents. You have to talk to the parents about what the expectations are, because they're like, why is my student watching YouTube all the time? And that's really important, is making parents understand what we're doing. And the feedback I've gotten from parents in the past 5 years since I've been doing this is that they really know what their students are learning, because they can watch along. They're also less stressed out about helping students through a really tough material. One of the things is I teach certain things in a specific way, and parents learned it a different way back when they were in school. So when the kids do the activity and work in here, I have control over that. I know what they don't know. There's no hiding. There's no parents doing kids' homework for them. There's no hiding. I know exactly what kids need. Right. And I'm able to split up into usually 4 groups. So if I'm doing group work, I'll split it up to 4 tables, and then kids who need extra help will be at my table, and we rotate through. When I go over homework, I usually split my kids up into 2 halves. One's doing activity, the other's going through classwork answers with me over there. So I'm really able to break up my class and differentiate them instead of just one big clump. And just mixing it up. I'm able to do a lot more activities. Video-wise, I mix it up. I have them read sometimes articles. I have them go through a simulation that's already pre-made. It's just mixing up the class, making it interesting. It's definitely, you can't get into a lull of doing the same thing over and over again, because it gets boring after a while. And I'll show you some examples of things I've done in class with sort of the activity part, besides labs. I won't bore you with that. Yes?
I could even see you extending this towards the end of the year, where they have to take a subject and they have to create a flipped classroom for their peers to teach that. Okay.
Yeah, so we do a review. I have it on my other computer, but the kids actually do a review of different units, and they actually teach, and they do like the full-blown video production with like Newton's laws and whatnot. So it's a quick end of the year thing, and I use that sometimes, some of the kids' contents, to introduce new content for the kids for the following year as well. So
they see students.
Yes.
Okay.
And then I mentioned communicate to parents by flipping it so they understand. Typically positive feedback for that. This is my reference list, so everything I've said today is referenced through meta cognitive studies, project-based learning. Everything's mentioned in here. You can access the links there and the DOI information. Everything I do has to be cited. So if you are interested in any of these, I have copies of these papers that you are more than welcome to listen to. Talks about student engagement. You mentioned age ranges. The earliest I've seen is kindergarten kids start, all the way until college and whatnot. So these studies are primarily between the grades of I think it's 3rd grade is the smallest one I looked for my research, all the way until 12th grade. So I focus along those lines. But yeah, it starts at a very young age. So if you ever want to come talk to me about any tools that you want, this website that you have here, I'm going to continue to expand. I'm currently moving a lot of stuff from my old website to this one, so that, and I'll send you guys an email when there's content. There are videos of how to use Explain Everything on here. There's also videos of how to do PowerPoint casting with QuickTime Capture. I also talk basic equipment that I use. So I do use this front-facing camera. A lot of YouTube vloggers use it often, but you can actually see your face you know, 1080p. It's great.
Oh, that's
my
how
phone.
you make your video?
Yes. If you're interested in using
Most
the GoPro,
phones now do.
one of the things that I, fortunately, working with Scott Lieberman and Flint Hill, even though I wasn't teaching there, was that they provide a lot of GoPros for schools, so you can get a good discount on them, as well as things like Final Cut, which is the movie editing. It's sort of an addiction almost. It starts off as like, you know, I'm just doing this for, you know, the kids, but then I challenge myself to make the videos and make the content even more engaging. But really, you only need your computer, and then if you have an iPad, you can start doing the screencasting with the writing. But a lot of the handouts that I use for the kids are things that I've created my first year teaching that I've altered. So I'm not reinventing the wheel, I'm just reinventing the way that I'm delivering the content. But anyways, everything is on here. I also have the full videos of some content here. I'll update the videos with showing you how to use Explain Everything. It's going to be very similar to the video that I showed you all on how to do guided access as well. So this is on here. I'll put the links to all the research and then some websites for tools as I'm importing over.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So the videos you put up for the kids are on the same type of page as well? Like
I
this?
do it through the portal. So
Okay, so you put it directly on the portal.
yeah. And Edpuzzle, I'll put a little video on how to use Edpuzzle, but it's a way for you to watch a video and you can embed questions as they're going through their video. And then at the end, it'll give you a score. And you'll usually look at that. I'll tell the kids that they have to do an Edpuzzle video by midnight so that I get in the morning or before class. And you can do questions, you can do discussion questions, you can do different, you know, as they're watching, they get to these markers and they have to answer them to get to the end. Essentially, it's
Kind of like the
great
videos that they have this.
Oh, yeah, for the help.
Yeah. So you do that to
First
someone
session is
else's
now
video?
over, middle
Yes.
school
So
faculty.
any YouTube video,
Please move on to the second
do
session.
Khan
We've got
Academy
a short
videos
break,
as well,
but we're
so
starting in about
these
3
of
minutes
you
in
like
session
any
2.
specific
Thank
Khan
you all.
Academy
Bye.
videos, you can also embed them in here, TED Talks and anything else. So it's
Oh.
already a pre-made thing. And once you make an account, I'll show you in that video as well. So try to condense everything. So.
Andrew, this was
Available for support if we try.
Yes, absolutely. I am here for all of you.
Could I do it?
This is amazing.